We left off last week. The siege of Londonderry is over. The Jacobites are beat. The Williamites have arrived. The fleet with the Mountjoy has come with the food, and the people are saved. So, the people lit bonfires to celebrate, and we all know all about bonfires here in Ulster, friends. So this is the 28th of July, the boom was broken and the ships arrive. By the 31st of July, the Jacobites are now left and they're gone. So the Williamites are now in charge of Londonderry, and the people are rejoicing and they've finally got food and water. Kirk has heard about this and he sends out support to Enniskillen then. So he sends out some guns and some powder and also some officers from his fleet. So he sends out 6 officers to help out with the garrison, and one of them is a man who's going to make his name. That's Colonel Wolsey. Wolsey's a very old soldier who had served in the campaigns in the Anglo-Dutch Wars and also at Tangier. So he was a well-known officer, very well liked. Came from Staffordshire in England. Wolsey arrives and Gustavus Hamilton, the governor, asks him to take over the garrison and the officers. So Wolsey gets the men together and starts training them up, and then he hears straight away that the Jacobites are on their way, and the Jacobites have sent Mountcashel, who is one of their better officers. They actually have 3 armies of Jacobites now in the area. One is Patrick Sarsfield, who's in Sligo. The second one is the Duke of Berwick, who is over towards Donegal. And now you have Mountcashel coming from Belturbet. So Mountcashel decides that he is going to attack Enniskillen. First, he needs to take a strategic position, and that's Crom Castle. But Crom Castle's held by veterans from the Enniskillens, and the small force of Jacobites that are sent by Mountcashel are defeated and pushed back. So Mountcashel then decides that he is going to make a stand against the Enniskilleners at Newton Butler, and he decides the Newton Butler is going to be the place. That's where he's going to defeat them. Newton Butler has a quite hilly position, and that's where he's going to put most of the men. The problem with Newton Butler is around Newton Butler it's mostly bog area, and cavalry and bog, they don't mix. So his force consisted of 3 battalions of infantry, 16 regiments of horse, and 4 small cannon, probably 2-pounder, 6-pounders. So the 16 regiments of horse are not going to be able to do very much, at Newton Butler because of this bog. So then he decides that he's going to try and stop the Enniskilleners getting to Newton Butler. So he sends a small force under Anthony Hamilton, and this is Richard Hamilton, who was in charge of the siege of Londonderry, his younger brother. He decides that he's going to send him and a force to take Lisnaskea Castle. Lisnaskea's just outside Enniskillen. But again, they're pushed back because the Williamite officer in charge of Lisnaskea is a man called Colonel Berry, and he's a well-known officer within the Western Protestant Army and very well liked, a very experienced officer. So with 400 musketeers sent by Gustavus Hamilton to support them, they fight the Jacobites back, and again Anthony Hamilton is forced to retire and go back to Mountcashel. So Mountcashel then forms his men in Newton Butler. This is going to be the defensive position. The Williamites, so the Jacobites have 6,000 men altogether. The Williamites, in response to that, they have the regiments of Tiffin, so it's Tiffin's Greys. You have Lloyd's regiment, you have Wolsey's own regiment of foot, you have Berry's horse, and you have Stone's horse. 2,100 men. So they're outnumbered 3-1, the Williamites. But the Jacobites have, as I say, have put themselves in a position that the cavalry is not going to be used. The Enniskilleners, led by Wolsey, see the Jacobites on the hill, and Wolsey takes out his sword and he says, "No popery, onto them!" And Wolsey then charges forward with his men, they get close enough that they're going to use their muskets. And they get their muskets and they prime them and they fire 3 times at the Jacobites. Then they charge onto the Jacobites. The Jacobites, to be fair, do a great job, and they hold. This is the Jacobite infantry. They hold the Williamites back. The Williamites fight on, and then Colonel Berry and Colonel Stone of the horse dismount and get their men on foot, and now they hit the Jacobites in the flank, and they start to take the toll upon the Jacobites. Then a decision is made by Mountcashel that really loses the battle for them. He asks the cavalry to move into another position that they can use against the Williamite infantry. And the Jacobite infantry look round and they see their cavalry retiring. It looks like they're retreating. And this panics them, and they fall into what is military known as disorder. So the Williamites are pushing them forward, and then they see their cavalry running. This panics them completely, and they throw off their equipment, throw away their weapons, and they start to run. And hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of men are running. And some of them get away, no problem, and they get towards Strabane, which is where the main Jacobite command is. But around about 2,600 men altogether are killed basically on the way, because the Protestant people of the villages and the towns, especially some of them, get up towards Lough Erne, and the people of Lough Erne fall on them with their swords and they kill them. And around about 2,500 are killed. 2,000 are killed by the sword, and 500, to say, are driven into Lough Erne and are drowned. Now you think this is harsh, but you have to remember what these people have suffered under the Jacobites. You hear about Kilkerry, where they went into the village and they decimated the place, and they raped the women, and they murdered people and cut their heads off and played football with them. So the Protestant people of Ulster are getting back at the Jacobites for what they have done to them. So Wolsey is jubilant, and he goes back to Enniskillen, and Hamilton has this great dinner and to celebrate, and the people are out and they're celebrating as well. And while this is all happening, of course, we have Londonderry, and Londonderry is a wreck. Londonderry is basically, it's been destroyed inside and out, and Walker and Mitchelburn get together and they start, getting the place back into some order. Then they have to get rid of the bodies because they don't want the bodies decaying, and so some are burnt, some are buried, and of course there's the famous burial mound there in Londonderry of so many people that were buried. At the start of the siege, we said there was around about 8,000 to 10,000 people within the city. They have lost around about 4,500 to 5,000 people. So they've lost a lot of people, and this is it's a massive cost to the city and to the people of Ulster. Kirk himself then finally gets his act together and arrives at the city on the 4th of August, and Walker and Mitchelburn meet him outside the city, and they offer him the keys to the city and the governorship, but he says, no, you've done a good job, you don't need to give me this. So they then go back into the city. Kirk forms up all his men, and they march through the city, and a great parade is had. And we all know about great parades in the city of Londonderry, friends. And I'm sure many people who are watching this have walked through the city of Londonderry. So they had a great dinner then in Mitchelburn's house, but it was meagre rations. That's what Walker says about it. William also knows what's going on. William has heard all what's going on, and he decides that the Western Protestant army and Kirk are not enough to defeat the Jacobites. So he decides that he's going to send another army, and he decides that this army should leave and leave soon. But who does he put in charge? He doesn't trust the British officers because many of them served under James. So who does he go to? He goes to Schomberg. Schomberg, known as the ablest commander by Matthew Glosier in his book, because he was one of the best soldiers of his generation. But by the time he comes into William's service, he's an older man, and we'll talk about how he mishandles the whole situation in Ireland. But he is chosen because he is one of William's more easier to go to officers. He's a very well known man, and he has the respect of the people. So William also doesn't trust the British Army yet, and he goes and he looks at his continental armies as the armies he's going to send to Ulster. So he looks to the British regiments that he likes are the ones that have formed since he has become king. So he goes to them, he goes to the French Huguenots, and he goes to his Dutchmen. And he goes to Schomberg and says, right, form these regiments up, get them together, and you're going to get your fleet together and leave from Liverpool, from a place called Hoy Lake. So Schomberg gets the army together, gets the fleet together. It takes a while, and there's this whole nonsense of skullduggery within the Williamite ranks, because some of the Williamite officers were used to serve under James. But Schomberg finally gets it together, and he has an army of 14,000 men. So this is a big, big army. So combined with the troops already in Ulster, well over 20,000 now, which is enough to cope with the Jacobites. So Schomberg gets the armies together, as I said, and the fleet eventually leaves on the 13th of August. Originally they wanted to land at Londonderry, but by the time they got themselves together, Londonderry was over, and they were ready. The Western Protestant Army had moved on. So eventually Schomberg lands, and it was the 10th of August they left, and the 13th of August they arrive in Groomsport near Bangor, in County Down. And the 14,000 men take about a day and a half to embark and get back on the land. And Schomberg forms up his men, and the first place they need to take is a village called Belfast. Yeah, Belfast at this time was a village. And it was being held by a Jacobite officer of great renown, a man called Sir Charles Fielding. But he only had 250 men. So there was a small skirmish outside what is now the city of Belfast, and then the Williamites moved on. The next place they needed to take was Carrickfergus. Carrickfergus was a key position, and it was being held by a Jacobite commander, McCarthy Moore, with 2 regiments of foot. So Schomberg knew that they were going to have to do something with Carrick. Carrick, as I say, was held by McCarthy Moore, one of the Jacobites' best commanders, and 2 regiments of foot. The Jacobites burned the town, around the suburbs of the town, to not give the Williamites any supply of food. So the 20th of August, 5 regiments of Williamite foot arrive at Carrickfergus. By the 21st of August, the cannons and the great siege mortars arrive as well. And they start the siege. And the siege is from land and from sea. So the ships have come round and they're starting bombarding the castle of Carrickfergus as well. And it lasts a whole week. To be fair to McCarthy Moore, they eventually come to terms. Breaches are made in the walls, and Schomberg then says to him, look, sir, if you want to, we will kill you all. But they come to terms, and McCarthy Moore then marches out with his men, and they let them go, basically, without weapons and without anything else. But it's a very small campaign, and so but it is part of the whole thing. Schomberg has lost 150 Williamite soldiers, and McCarthy Moore lost 160. And then we have around about 70 or 80 are injured as well. So Schomberg, Schomberg has lost a few men, but they've taken it relatively easily. Problem is then the Protestants of the town come in, and when McCarthy Moore and his men are leaving, they decide that they're going to attack McCarthy Moore. And Schomberg himself has to take his pistol out, and some of his men have to take their swords out and get amongst the crowd and say, get back, leave them alone, let them leave in peace, And the Western Protestant Army and the people of Carrickfergus, they're not happy with Schomberg, but now they've been liberated. This 14,000 men now are in Ulster, and Ulster is saved. And Schomberg then basically has to get his men together. This is August, and then it takes him another 3 or 4, 5 weeks to get everything together, and then they start moving towards the Jacobites. The main Jacobites at this time are in Uri. So Schomberg starts to move towards them. September comes in, and it starts to get very inclement. And then by October, November, it's getting very cold, and the men don't have the right equipment. And Schomberg basically then starts to panic, and he doesn't have enough support for food and the weapon, the equipment is not right. And Dr. Kenneth Ferguson, who was one of the medics, reports, this is from the book by Richard Doherty on the Williamite Wars, it is probably safe to assume that 9/10 of the men who arrived with Schomberg also came with disease. So many of these men were carrying diseases. And now this started to play a big role. The Jacobites retire back from Uri towards, over what is now the border, towards Dundalk. And they are, basically by October, the Williamites, and into November, the Williamites are suffering quite badly. James is in Dublin, of course, and his French advisors have advised him to basically hold at Dundalk. So he has sent many men, regiments back to Dundalk. So it says here, eventually the ground became so sodden that the men had nowhere to sleep. So you have disease, you have malnutrition. Schomberg doesn't have the right equipment, doesn't have enough food. The Jacobites are burning. This is another thing that's going on. The Jacobites are burning crops, and they're poisoning wells. So as the Williamites advance, they're moving into new areas, but these areas don't have any food or any water. And as I say, the headquarters for Schomberg then is at Drogheda. Schomberg's advance is further delayed by more attacks by what is known as Rapparees. Now these are Jacobite, unofficial Jacobite troops. These are they're brigands basically, and they're attacking into the Williamite lines. So Schomberg is suffering quite badly. The scorched earth policy of the Jacobites is causing massive amount of casualties through dysentery and cholera, and there's no clean water, so they're drinking dirty water, the Williamites. So the Duke of Berwick is in charge of this, and he's doing a great job. As I say, it says here, it was helped by the weather. The storms of the Irish Sea delayed Schomberg's supply ships. So the supply ships that are coming in to supply Schomberg's army are not arriving. So this really heavy rain, typical of Ireland, and Scotland, this really heavy rain is destroying everything. Schomberg's army marched south from Belfast on September the 2nd, it says, and by November the 5th, which was a very famous, remember the 5th of November, the regiments are so badly ill. They have now lost around about 5,674 men from the period of September to February of 1690. Almost 1/3 of Schomberg's army are dead. The reason being, Schomberg doesn't know Ireland. He has come to the country. He doesn't have enough food. The Western Protestant army have been starved. I mean, you've 105 days of siege in Londonderry, and then all this food comes in. Well, these couple of ships come in, and all the food's gone then. So they're having to then, go around and find food as well, and they're foraging. There's not enough food brought in by Schomberg. Schomberg's waiting for supply ships coming from England, and they're not coming because of the weather. So more and more men are dying. So 14,000 men that Schomberg has brought, 5,674 are dead. And Richard Doherty says here, what caused this was an epidemic of illness. So you have so many different illnesses going on that, these soldiers are just dropping. Dysentery, cholera, all those waterborne diseases. And William, he's dumbfounded by this. He thought when he sent Schomberg in August that, that it would be an easy campaign for him, that he should be able to drive through Ulster into what is now the south of Ireland and push the Jacobites back with this massive army. But Schomberg hasn't got the right equipment. He doesn't have all-weather equipment. He doesn't have winter coats for these guys. The water is poisoned. The food and the land, the scorched earth policy of the Jacobites has worked so well. Schomberg is stuck. He's absolutely stuck. And October, November, as I say, the men are dying in their thousands. So what does William do? Well, we're going to talk about it in the next talk, friends. Really, this is the end of this talk today. But, yet again, Schomberg was sent to relieve the people. He's done this. There's no two ways about it. The Western Protestant army are in a position now that they can support. The problem is that Schomberg's army from England have come, and many of them have been carrying disease with them, and they have also made it worse in the country. So you now have an epidemic of illnesses, like what we're going through at the minute with coronavirus, friends. You think if coronavirus was in an army of 14,000 men, how many of those men would die? So dysentery and cholera and exposure to the elements is really what's going to take the toll here in this campaign. So Schomberg just has to basically do what he's told. William, he knows himself that he's going to have to intervene. He knows himself. This, we're into November, into December. We're getting nearly ready for 1690. William himself is going to have to arrive, and he's going to have to do something. So what is he going to do? Well, you're going to find out in the next talk. Okay? So the books that I've used today, friends, I know some people have been asking me to tell people what the books are. So for the early part of the talk, what we did there about Newton Butler, it's this book here. And it's the Enniskillen and Battle of Newton Butler, 1689, by a guy called Darren Graham. And it's available from the Pike and Shot Society. You probably will get it on Amazon as well. Very good book on some of the parts of the campaign a lot of people would look over. The other book, of course, that I'm using is this one. This is the Williamite War in Ireland, 1688 to 1681 by Richard Doherty. Probably one of the best writers on the Williamite Wars, certainly from an Ulsterman's point of view. So that's the end of our talk today, friends. It is a wee bit earlier. Usually it's over half an hour, but we're into now the sort of position that William himself's going to have to get involved. So what's he going to do? Schomberg has really messed up here. The rest of the Western Protestant army have proven themselves. So Wolsey and the Enniskilleners have proven themselves. So what is the next move? We're going to find out next week. Okay. Listen, thanks very much for watching, as always. And remember, if you want to watch any of the first talks, if you go onto YouTube, David has actually uploaded all these onto YouTube now. So You can go on there and watch them all again if you've forgotten something. And the other thing, of course, is I'll be on live to answer any of your questions. So again, friends, this is another 6 or 7 months of history I've covered in less than half an hour. So I have overshot some parts of history, but if you want to read, there's the books. Read those books. These are this is where everything that I tell you is from. It's from book. It's not hearsay or anything else. So yes, thanks very much for watching. And remember, support the NHS. And remember to, at the end of this talk, because this is going out on Thursday, remember to go out now and support Captain Tom Moore, who has been an absolute inspiration to us all. It's Captain Tom's birthday today, and I would like to thank Captain Tom from everybody, but also wish him a happy birthday. It's his 100th birthday today, and the Queen has sent him a message as well. So, superb man, and a man that we could all take inspiration from, the same as we can take inspiration from these talks from our ancestors. So, thank you for watching, and I wish you all well. God bless you all, and I'll see you all next week for William and his arrival in Ulster. Okay, thank you very much. Bye now.